This is Nina Lockwood. Welcome to Get Your Happy Back. Stories and insights that will inspire you to find new sources of happiness in your own life. Hello and welcome to Get Your Happy Back. And today we are going to have fun. We're going to talk with Lisa Giruzzi. Lisa, welcome.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here.
Me too. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Lisa. Lisa is a peak performance coach. She's a best-selling author. She's an accomplished speaker. So Lisa, tell us about your books, your company, and how you help your clients.
Okay, in that order or
Whatever you'd like.
okay. Um, how I help my clients is to take the things out of the way that are in the way of them performing and living life in the way that they most want to. So, my work is not about adding more information. I'm a transformative coach. My company name is actually Transformational Conversation. I've been in that conversation for 30 years on how to uh, live life differently, but it doesn't start with actions. It starts way more upstream and how you see life. And so I help people to see what's in the way. And primarily I focus on business, although it permeates throughout people's lives.
Mhm.
And I absolutely love what I do. I've been coaching for 30 years, uh, and it's evolved dramatically over that time. And my books, both of them were written more than 10 years ago when I was coaching in a different way. I still think they're valuable, but they're not the books I would have written today. I actually have a new book in mind that I'm toying with. So, um, and that's me.
That's a good start.
Yeah.
So since this conversation is mostly about finding and keeping happiness, in your experience, what do you think gets in the way of people's happiness, however we define it or they define it?
Yeah. It's a great question. I've been thinking about this ever since we talked about my being a guest. And it's really in line with what I think my next book is about. It's I like to call it unconditional living.
Like that term.
Yeah, when we think about people talk about unconditional love, um, I think that there's something about the conditions we place on what life is supposed to be like
Mm.
that keeps us from happy. And I say that because me too, not like, oh, everyone else. I mean, but what I've discovered, especially over the last 6 to 8 years, has been happiness is there for the taking at any moment, regardless of what's happening. And it's only because I have a condition that I think is necessary for me to be happy.
You mean like one of those shoulds?
Exactly. That's my idea for my book. It's unconditional living, getting out of the should life or letting go of the should life. And you know, uh, it just seems to me that we innocently place all these conditions and have this idea that there's this ideal life that we should be living. It's like this parallel universe where Lisa's the right weight, she's the right, you know, age, she's the perfect success story. Like there's this perfection to this ideal life.
Mm.
And I'm constantly, not so much now, but my life was a lot about comparing myself to this imaginary parallel life.
Yeah.
And that is the recipe for unhappiness and suffering and despair, FYI.
I've been there. I know that one.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, and so the more and more I live in what's happening now. And I don't mean that in some fancy schmancy way, but really, I think it's Byron Katie who said, when you argue with reality, you lose, but only every time.
Right.
Yeah. And, you know, it's true, right? Like this shouldn't be happening. I shouldn't be this way. I shouldn't have that thought. I should be happy, right? Like all the shoulds that are in the fabric of how we live, and thinking that happiness is a someday event.
Mm-hmm.
When
Mm-hmm.
I make this much money or I get the right job or have the right significant other or whatever. It's like we're thinking, we have all this thinking around when happiness is going to happen rather than being happy.
Yes. And I definitely have been a recipient of that kind of conditioning, both in my own family and then society, school, you name it. We
Mhm.
get it from every corner, every magazine, how things should be. This
Mhm.
ideal life that really ends up making us feel so unhappy.
Yeah.
One of the things I wondered if you have noticed is that as you've gotten older, those requirements, those shoulds seem less demanding. Because one of the things I was thinking about as I was telling you about that Roseanne Cash concert that I saw the other night is that I think one of the blessings of getting older is realizing you don't have to prove yourself to anyone anymore. You've already done that. You've already accomplished things. You've already checked off the bucket list of things that are supposed to make you happy. And now there's a certain kind of freedom that you don't have to answer to someone in a way that is inauthentic anymore. And I wonder what you thought about that.
I don't know. I don't know if that's a function of growing older or a function of understanding how life works. And
Good
it's
point.
hard for me to say because, if I had known this at what I know now at 25, I don't know how life would have been. And certainly many of my clients are much younger than I am and are transforming how they relate to life and letting go of the whole proving uh, mentality.
Hmm.
Not everywhere, but more and more, because I still find at times, and this isn't a reflection on me, it's just what brains do, is I still compare myself to other people, and that that's one of those things that is a total recipe for unhappiness. And whether I'm comparing myself to someone who I think is doing worse than me or someone I'm doing better, it's still not good, right? And I don't even mean not good like like, oh, I shouldn't do that. I mean it it's another argument with reality, right? So I think it's likely that I'm less as I've aged gracefully as I have. um, yeah, I'm sure there's some of that. I remember in my turning, in my 50s being much more um, at peace with a lot of things just because I was like, yeah, I don't need to get caught up in that. Um, and, as I continue to age, I think I have more space for other people to be where they're at
Mm,
and, less likely to try to uh, and I don't mean that about my clients, but I mean my personal life, things like that.
sure,
My
sure.
husband. But it's hard to say. I mean, it's really hard to say because so much has shifted just from the understanding that I have about the role our thoughts play
So talk a
in
little bit about
life.
that because I'm sure people are curious what you're referring to.
Sure. As I said, I've been a coach for a long time, and there was an evolution of how my coaching uh, occurs now. But one of the fundamental shifts that happened to me, or I don't know, happened to me, one of the fundamental shifts that I saw about 8 years ago or so was that life wasn't happening to me, it was happening through me. And all the work that I had done up until that point, I had certainly talked to people about their thoughts distinct from facts. I talked to people about, using their strengths versus their weaknesses. There were a lot of systems versus psychology, like a lot of those things I talked about. But the piece that was missing for me, that when I say it out loud sounds really duh, like, but I missed it, sometimes the most obvious of things, um, is that I not only, how do I say it? That there was something beyond thoughts and feelings and circumstances that was who I essentially am, that the thoughts and feelings and circumstances were arising inside of.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a game changer for me. I could no longer not see it, right? Like I could see the moods coming and going, the thoughts coming and going, the things I thought were important not being as important at different times. And then, all of that was going on and my life was getting better and better, and that I was more at peace and happy so much more of the time. My circumstances didn't dramatically change overnight, but who I uh, was so clear to me, and who I wasn't was very clear to me.
So can I ask a question here? When you
Sure.
talk about who you are you referring to your true nature, or are you referring to something else?
Yeah, I would say true nature is a way of saying it. I think of it as, uh, sort of the screen that life is projected onto. Like Rupert Spira talks about an aware space, right? Like an aware space, I think he uses. But like that, yeah, our true nature is this aware consciousness, this knowing, right? This, like when a baby is born, there's an aware space, and the baby isn't uh, even doesn't even know that they're there. Like there's a body and all of that, and then that gets all added. And I think there's a real freedom in seeing that all unhappiness, all, shoulds, all of that is all added,
Mm-hmm.
that none of it's true. That the one fundamental truth is we are, like we exist. There's an existence.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one fundamental truth, and everything else is made up. And so there's just so much freedom in that. It doesn't mean bad stuff doesn't happen. As you know, my husband had a brain bleed in 2020 and almost died.
Yeah.
This I didn't get out of that because I had this understanding. I didn't not have uh, moments of despair and suffering because I had this understanding. But what I did have, in addition to a hugely transformational experience, was a grounding in that no matter what happened, it was all going to be okay, and that it wasn't up to me how it went. Like it was not up to me. And in that space of it not being up to me, all kinds of cool, creative ways of dealing with life came to me. Ideas came to mind that were available, I think, because I was so clear this was outside my realm of knowledge or understanding or control.
Yeah.
And so there was I don't know, force me isn't the right word, but there was nowhere to go. You know what I mean? I was dealing with this issue. It was 2020, pandemic, nobody else around. So it was me and my husband dealing with his recovery day in and day out, making it up as we went along. And again, it didn't. It's not like, oh, I know this now, so I never get unhappy. No, it's that it doesn't affect me in the same way.
Mm.
It's like a thunderstorm. You know it's going to come and go. You know, no thunderstorm ever stuck around forever. And even a thunderstorm at its worst gets good, gets better and worse
Hmm.
as the thunderstorm is going through, right?
Right, right. So, what I'd love to do is sort of unpack what you're saying because it sounds like, and I'm familiar with this understanding as well, that once we are aware that there's something else running the show, and that it's not that God is my co-pilot, is that we're God's co-pilot, that freedom that you don't have to control your circumstances makes you less identified with what feelings you have or what thoughts you have. They come and go because we're in this. I mean, nobody knows where thoughts come from. They just come in and then they go out again after a while. But what I'm wondering if you can add to this conversation is how this kind of freedom makes it easier to live life. So I don't have to be identified with my own thoughts. I don't have to be identified with the rules of the game that society has set out for us because we're making everything up. So could you speak to that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of ways. One thing I think that's super cool is that because I am so clear that I can't control anything, like it's just not up to me how things go. That doesn't mean I don't show up to my office every day and do things and take actions. It just gives you the freedom to play the game, not worrying about the result.
It's like an improv
Yeah,
scenario.
it's like the difference between, you know, like when you are attached to a particular result, right? Like I need this client, or I got to get this sale, or I need to be this weight, or whatever the goal is. And you're so attached to it, like you've identified that A, it's up to you, and somehow your happiness depends on it, right? We put all
Mm.
this significance and weight on it. It it creates this uh, like this lane that you have to stay inside of. And then when you're inside that lane, the choices look really scary, right? Because what if it doesn't turn out? What if I never, get that thing or weigh that away? And so it's like this level 10 problem. Now that's not when our brain works at its best, right? It's not when, I mean, you don't have to know this understanding to know that no brain works as well under stress as when it's at ease, right? It's just not the way it works. So you add all that pressure and all that significance. Now every action is like you're trying to walk a marathon with 50-pound weights on each ankle, right? That's what it's like. But when you have the experience of, oh, I want this thing, I really want this thing to happen. Wouldn't it be cool if I got this, if this thing happened, if I was able to make it happen? Now it's play. Now it's like, okay, how do I, what would be fun to do? Right? What would be interesting? What would what would I like to learn? Right? And it's this experiment that you're in life experimenting and seeing what happens. Like, oh, I notice when I drink more water, I feel better. Or I notice when I drink too much water, I don't feel so great, right? Or whatever the thing is. Or when I'm working with a client right now to help build her business. And, she comes to the conversation. She's like, no, no, this is real. I have to make money. And we fall into these traps all the time. And I'm like, well, how's that thinking working for you? Like, how's believing that working for you? Are you enjoying your work? Are you making the calls you need to make? No. Are your conversations free and interesting? No. Okay. Well, how about we try something else? Like, what if it isn't up to you? What if this is about, providing the service that you provide and helping people? What would you do then? Then it becomes, oh, I'd call this person or I'd offer this product, da, 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 da. Like 50 ideas come to mind, and she may not take them all on, but then it's like, okay, well, how about this idea? Which one feels most, or of these ideas, which one feels most fun or most interesting to you? She picks one or two. Okay, let's experiment with them this week. Let's see what happens. Now she's having a different week, right? And more freedom doesn't mean that the worry doesn't come and go. It just means it doesn't have to be the avenue to get to what you want because it never really works.
That's really a great point. And so here's a scenario, and tell me, flesh this one out for me. So you've got someone in their job who has their boss or their board, whoever, breathing down their neck. You've got to get this in. You've got this deadline. You have to make sure X, Y, and Z happen. And to implement what you're talking about or to be able to see what you're talking about, how do how would someone need to shift the sense of panic and urgency and holy smokes, if I don't do this, I'm in big trouble?
Well, I don't think you have to shift that. That'll shift on its own. I think that we have this misunderstanding that we have to feel a certain way to perform, and that's just not true. You can perform under any circumstance. I mean, under any feelings. It's just whether you give the feelings importance or not, right? If I said, I need you to go ride this bike and you have to go this many miles by this amount of time, you would just figure out, okay, it's this many miles. How many miles can I ride on the bike? You know, and you would figure it out and you would just go ride the bike. You wouldn't go, well, how do I get motivated to ride the bike? No, you just get on a riding bike, right? And we do it all the time with things, right? We don't get motivated to go to the grocery store. We don't get motivated to, I don't know, clean the house. Maybe people do, I don't know, but we just do it, right? Because it needs to get done. The I think the thing that gets in the way with something like that is, and I know it's happened to me too, is I add too many shoulds and what ifs. So, the what ifs are, what if I don't get it done? Worrying about the future rather than dealing with the facts. Okay, this is an agreement I have to do this. It's part of my job. They need it by this date at this time. Between now and then, how do I make that work? What information do I need to get? Like, we get too caught up in the what if it doesn't turn out? And then that creates the pressure. The board isn't, or the boss isn't creating pressure. Our mind creates the pressure because we make something more important than something else.
Mm.
So my coaching would be, what are the facts? Is it doable? Right? If they said, I need this by tomorrow at 8 a.m. and it's 6 p.m., I'm going to be like, that ain't happening because I'm not staying up all night. Right? Like and then I would negotiate and create an agreement. But I think that if it's something that's doable, and you may have to ask, well, what other priorities can I let go
Mm.
while I'm working on this, giving my sole focus to this, right? Or work that out in some way. It's just what needs to get done.
That's a very different approach for most people because here's something that came up in my mind as you were talking is that there's one line of thinking which is trust your feelings, which I think is different from trust your gut instinct, trust something deeper in you. But if we're taught to trust our feelings, then we get so identified with them, the scary feelings or the pressure feelings or the anger feelings, whatever they are, is that we can't be present to what needs to be done in the moment.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think a lot of times it's because we've, I think, um, we have a misunderstanding that our feelings are coming from the world as opposed to it's not. It's coming from the way we're it's not the way we're thinking because we aren't thinking. Thinking is happening. And when we have thoughts, this system called the human body, which is a we've had this dichotomy of the brain and the body like it's two different things. It's all one system, right? So when you have a thought, we have a sensation that comes with the thought. And so then we identify the sensation with a label called feeling, angry, happy, sad, whatever. But if you took the circumstances out and you just had the experience, you wouldn't know what the experience is, right? Excitement and fear look very much the same in a body, right? The sensations are very similar. And so, I think that people identify with their feelings or, get enamored with that because it looks like it's coming from the world. And
So
it's
give
just
me an
not.
example of that, something that you would mistake that something was coming from the world.
Well, a deadline or the boss saying, I need this done by such and such a time, or else, or even if the or else is implied, right? Like, because that's a very neutral thing. The world is neutral, but you get a bunch of people together, they're going to a whole lot of agreement around that's stress, that's pressure, right? You look at Olympic athletes, they are not stressed when they're performing at the Olympics. They are the opposite of that, right? They can't control the outcome. They go and they perform. And the quietest mind performs the best, right? And it's not even that their mind is necessarily quiet. It's that they're not paying attention to what's going through their mind. They have their attention on this moment of now, this balance beam or this, swimming or whatever it's in this moment of now. So they're having the thoughts just like everybody else. They're not relevant.
Yeah,
So
that's such a great point that there are, especially those things that don't feel so good, the thoughts that feel crummy,
yeah,
that not taking them as the path I need to go down.
yeah. I coach a triathlete, and he also runs marathons all the time, and he competes, competitive, right? And so I'm coaching him not on that because that's not my area. I'm coaching him. He's a leader in a organization, and so we talk all the time about how when he's running, I said, when does the mind get loud when you're running? Really loud. He goes, yeah, about mile marker 18 or so. I go, what's it saying? Stop. You're crazy. You don't need to run anymore. And I go, and how often do you leave the race at mile marker 18? He goes, never. Why? Well, because I'm committed to running the whole race. Okay. Does the voice stop yelling at you? Never. It doesn't stop. It just doesn't give it any attention. It's irrelevant. It's an irrelevant commentary. Because if he stopped at mile marker 18, what do you think his thoughts would be then? Oh, you loser. What's wrong with you? You
Right.
only had, however many miles left. You gave up, right? The mind, the brain does not let us win.
I love
Doesn't.
that phrase, irrelevant.
Yeah.
It's just spinning.
Yeah.
But it's so easy to believe that, oh, that's right. I have to do this rather than reclaiming that commitment, which I think is easily distracted. We're easily distracted from it when we start believing the thoughts that are making us feel like we can't do it.
Yeah. And it's so innocent because we have this misinterpretation about how the mind body system works, right? Is that, oh, there's such a thing as stress happening to me. And that's just never true. There's such a thing as unhappy happening to me. I mean, my mom passed away earlier this year, and there was every emotion under the sun, including joy and happiness. And at her wake, seeing people I haven't seen in years, cousins showing up, the joy and love in that room was everywhere.
Mhm.
And my mom was in the casket, and there was that too. So explain that, right? Like people say, oh, what about dying? Okay. I've never been to a wake where there hasn't been laughter and love and joy, all to, and sadness. It's all there.
Yeah.
So there's no thing that happens that causes a reaction. That is a made up thing because that's how it looks. But the actual way that it works is the opposite. Stuff happens, it's all neutral. And then based on our neural pathways, we have a reaction. And that reaction looks like it's coming from the outside, but it isn't. It's not really a reaction. We have a conditioned thoughts. And, they look real. So suddenly, oh my God, my boss. Oh my God, this is
My
scary.
job, my
My
life.
job, my business, my
Right.
kids, my this, my that, whatever it is. Like there's always just stuff happening and then commentary. And the commentary is irrelevant unless it's knowledge that you need. I work with emergency medical services leaders. I co-own my second business. I co-own a leadership academy for paramedics and EMTs. And I love working with them for so many reasons. But one of my favorite things is that they think EMS is stressful. And goodness gracious, if we did a survey, so would everybody, right? So when we slow down and we really explore it, and I say, okay, think about one of your critical incidents that you've been on, like 2 to 4% of the time, to be honest, maybe 5% of the time of all the calls are what they consider critical incidents, life or death. And I talk about that and I say, okay, tell me about the incident itself. What happens the moment you get on scene? I do this, I do this, I do this. You assess the situation, you start at taking action. Where's the stress? Comes in after. During the time they're there, and this is universal, their mind is so quiet, just like the Olympic performers. It's what needs to happen. This needs to happen. This needs to happen. This needs to happen. They know they can't control the outcome, but they're going to do their damnedest to make sure that person gets to the hospital and the
Mhm.
hospital takes care of what's next. So then we talk about what happens next. And what happens next? What ifs and shoulds, the commentary. And they mistake it for truth.
Mhm.
And that's where stress comes from. And that's where burnout comes from. It's not what's happening because they're well trained for that. They're not trained at all with how to deal with the barrage of thoughts that come in. That's where trauma happens. Trauma doesn't happen in the event. It happens in my opinion, it happens in the thinking that follows. So when they can start to disconnect that, they start to see that they did the absolute best they could in that moment. They couldn't have done it any differently, no matter what. They
Mhm.
could not have done it any differently. The freedom that comes from that. They don't have to add a 50-pound weight to their back for the next call. They're free. That's what I'm interested in.
And that freedom is, I think, an expression of that true nature of ours, that
Exactly.
essential. The baby, born as a baby, you're happy. You're not, unless there's some trauma that's been transmitted genetically or something, but mm, 9 babies out of 10 are, let me at it. Let me at life. Isn't this amazing? This is exciting. And then all of the shoulds happen and all the expectations start to get layered on us. But that initial beingness is so obviously happy and happy to be alive.
Yeah. And they cry when they're wet and they, you know, hungry, they have a sensation, they voice that, whatever, but it comes and goes.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we see it in that's humans in their natural state. And everything, once we get the ability to have concepts and language, then we start to go into survival.
Yeah.
And again, surviving a situation is the opposite of happy, right? It's
Well,
like,
that's for sure.
yeah. And the brain is geared towards survival. That's
Yeah.
innocent. That's how we got to be a species that still exists, right?
Yeah.
Evolution is a powerful thing. But when you see that, oh, my brain also is able to thrive, right? But the first system that got created was the amygdala, and that is fight or flight. That is all
Mm-hmm.
survival.
Mm-hmm.
And that has the ability to determine where the resources go in our body. So if I'm even have a whiff of this is a dangerous situation, it could just be dangerous because I'm walking into a room full of people I don't know. It doesn't even have to be someone's chasing me with, an axe or something. It's somebody didn't like my cooking. I mean, it could be that ridiculous, right? My body reacts like I'm being chased with an axe. And so the resources go from the highest functioning part of the brain. No, no, we don't need that during fight or flight. We need to be able to run and breathe a lot, right?
Right.
So that's where the resources go. So that's why I tell people do not trust your feelings and sensations. Most of the time, they're giving you the wrong information innocently, but it's true, right? Because we're in fight or flight. If we're not distinguishing our thinking from reality, we're in fight or flight.
So how is this different from a stress reduction program, what you're talking about? I mean, it is a form of stress reduction, but it's different than what we
Yeah.
commonly refer to as stress reduction.
Yeah. For me, the way it looks to me, and I'm open to just kind of exploring this, but the way it looks to me is stress reduction has the assumption that stress is a thing that exists in the world and we have to do something about it. In my work and in my own experiences, stress is like a thunderstorm. It comes and goes. Stress is not necessary for anything. It's it it's a label that I put on a particular experience. And I have no idea if that experience is the same for you as it is for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of my favorite examples of this is I love giving speeches. I absolutely love it. Put me in front of a room, baby. I love it. That's where I live. You can put someone else in front of the same room and they're like quivering, right?
Right. Fear of public speaking.
Yeah. Well, if public speaking was scary, wouldn't we all be afraid of it?
Right. So it's
You
not an
know?
inherent quality. And I think that's what I'm hearing and what you're sharing is that the emotions that we attribute to an event, we think that the event is what's causing it rather than our
Yeah.
interpretation of the event itself.
Yeah. The moment people get that I'm working with, like when I'm coaching someone and they get experientially, so not, oh, this is a good idea, but they actually see for themselves that their thoughts are irrelevant, that their relationship to their thoughts is what's the problem. It's thoughts themselves aren't a problem. It's the relationship we have to. So if we have reverence for them, we believe them, we think they're relevant, right? All that. When you unhook that, when you see that is not who you are, that's not your essential being, and that relating to your thoughts as clouds on a windy day, stress seems to disappear. It doesn't lessen, it's gone. It's just not there. It doesn't
Mhm.
look necessary. Like, I don't need to get stressed about to get this done. That's like I'm adding something to this mix that doesn't need to be added. I'm making it more complex.
Mhm.
So there's just getting the thing done. And I might have thoughts about it. I might have worried thoughts about it, but that's not relevant.
Yeah. So talk about the difference between, well, let's see how I'm going to say this. There are some thoughts that are brilliant and some thoughts that are very self-destructive. How do you know the difference between the two? I mean, that sounds like a silly question, but it speaks
No,
to
it's
your
not.
perspective.
Yeah, I have sort of a couple of different ways that I approach this because I don't think there's any black and white here in terms of what's a good thought or a bad thought. Then that's a whole nother nightmare I wouldn't want to get into, right? But there seems to be a quality to certain things that I would call thoughts, right? Like there's a quality to them. And when a thought comes through and it looks I don't know how to say it, like it just feels right. There's a feeling to it, like an idea. Like I'm in the midst of this book thought, and it's like it just feels like a cool thing to pursue. It's not I should write a book, which I've had that thought for 10 years because I haven't written a book in over 10 years. Well, not on my own. I've co-authored a couple, but I haven't written my own. And so I should write a book doesn't feel good. It doesn't make me want to. So to me, there's just a different quality to that.
Hmm.
Like I have good ideas all the time that don't have, or I think are good ideas that don't seem to have that same quality. You know, it's like one of my clients is a songwriter, and I'll ask her about, tell me about. I told you she wrote. Well, we were talking before I forgot it was before we started recording, but I have a very good friend who's a songwriter, and I'll ask her like, where did this song come from? She's like, I don't know. It just comes through her. Now, after it comes through her, her knowledge about music and writing songs and all that comes into like forming it into an actual song that she can perform. But the lyrics and music come through her the way they come through her.
Hmm.
And sometimes that happens and she's like, not it. You know what I mean? And then later it will be. But it's like she uses the education she has around music, the years of experience around music to shape and make that song one like beautiful.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. What I was thinking about in the back of my mind as I was asking that question is, and trying to articulate this, is that there is a place within us that is the channel for ideas,
Mm.
right? Like, hey, what about this? Or boom, there's another idea. And
Yes.
there's nothing critical about it. There's nothing depending on it.
Yeah.
So that it's not like I get this idea and I have a good feeling about it. Oh, that would be fun to try. Whereas, and I think that comes from our deeper nature
I
because
agree.
we don't have the restrictions of our critical minds and the judgment and the expectation and the shoulds, all of that stuff in the way. It's not, it's as though this comes from a different level or a different space, but that when we don't have that, the shoulds or the what ifs, as you were referring to it, or what's going to happen when, then we don't have to, we can appreciate the idea and say, yeah, I keep thinking of I Love Lucy when the candies were coming down the conveyor belt too fast for her to pack into the boxes. So she started eating them.
Yeah.
Is we do that sometimes with our thoughts is like, oh my God, it's if this happens, we keep stuffing ourselves with these worries or these panic attacks that we have. But
Yeah.
in this deeper place, there's a resonance that isn't yet covered over by judgments or expectations.
Yeah. Yeah, and what you're talking about really reminds me of, I've talked about this on other podcasts, so I don't necessarily need to go into a lot of detail, but the aha insight, I don't know what you want to call it, the night my husband was in the ER and had the brain bleed, and that moment of uh whatever you want to call it, the knowing that came through was from such a different place than an
Mm.
intellectual knowing. It's very hard to put words to, but the knowing was this isn't up to me and it's all going to be all right. But not like he's going to be all right or whatever my story about all right was it was more like I have everything I need inside of me for whatever happens. There's nothing going to happen that isn't handleable by not me, Lisa, the character that I play out, but that deeper God within all of us, that what I call infinite intelligence. Like I can trust that. Like I can trust get gravity. Like, we don't think of it as trusting gravity, but it's for me, it's like it's the same. There's gravity and there's this inner knowing within every single human being. And when we see that's there for our benefit any moment of any day, then life is just about creating. It's not about getting through or getting happy. It's like you can be, it's just happiness is there because it's not up to you anyway, and you don't need anything for it to be, to have it work out. It's going to work out, right? And but for our shoulds and what ifs, it's all working out. It's we just have this, like I said before, this parallel life that we think we should be living. Without that,
Yeah.
we're just living this life.
Yeah.
This is the one. This is it.
Yeah.
Have at it.
It's really, as you say, transformative when and if we can get to that point where we don't think there's anything wrong with feelings that are uncomfortable. Because so much of us and so much of this training that we get in the world is that we're always supposed to be happy. We're always supposed to be repeating our affirmations. We're always supposed to be riding high. And yet, most people are not acknowledging, or else they are acknowledging and ignoring the advice that they're having all these feelings and they don't know what to do with them, as if they need to do something with them.
Yeah, yeah. Well, listen, that's why I became a social worker way back in the day was because I wanted to feel better,
Me
you
too.
know? And that's why I was helping other people. And the first transformational program I did back in 1993 was so I would feel better. And, and for many years of my coaching, everything I was doing was to feel better. And that was the biggest shift for me was to see that that was just not up to me. And it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. I listen, I want to be happy as much as the next person. I just know that the more I focus on that, I'm not living life. And it's like the difference between playing the game and being in the stands talking about the game,
Mm-hmm.
and they're both, I don't know. I just don't find it as much fun to be in the sands. I like playing the game.
Right.
And I'm not always there. I'm, I tell my clients all the time, the minute I start walking on water, my rates are going up. But in the meantime, I'm on the path too. I'm on this novice to mastery game and I am, seeing all the time where I'm projecting my ideal onto myself, other people, life. Why would I want to rob myself of that happiness? It just doesn't make sense to me anymore.
Yeah. I'd like to talk about something that you and I talked about on a previous conversation, and I think you put it this way. We were talking about people who are at that, especially women who are at that point in their lives, they're saying, what else is there? And I think the way you had phrased it is, I have everything I want, but I'm still not happy. So,
Yeah.
how does what you're saying fill in the blanks of that conversation, of that statement?
Well, how much more time do we have? So,
Give it your
well,
best shot.
the first thing I would say is because the mistake is an innocent mistake, I can't say it enough, is that we think that things are going to make us happy. That's an outside in way to live, and it's the
Mhm.
hardest, most challenging way to live. And when you see that, okay, if it's not about the things, it's not about changing my thinking, because that's another trap, right? So I just have to be in a shit show and think it's not that bad. No, right? Like I've heard that one too, right? So you're telling me to think positively. God, no. No, please don't try to control your thinking. That's like trying to control the weather. It's just not the way it works. It's to see the irrelevance of it, to see what is actually happening in reality is neutral. It's just what's happening in reality. And one of my favorite sayings came from a former coach of mine who you know, Steve Chandler. He used to say, and I love it, given the circumstances, what do you?
And I think that came from Steve Hardison,
Oh, it may have,
but
but
the Steves
Chandler, I
have it.
never worked with him. So I know Steve Hardison coached Steve Chandler, so it may very well be. But when Steve said that to me, it really brought me to, everything in life is really a design problem. And every design problem has constraints. So you have paintings in the background, right? Your creativity is infinite, but your medium may only be, 5 by 6 or whatever, or 3 by 5. Like, so there's a constraint there. We don't think of that as a constraint, but it is. So we all have circumstance. If you watch the Paralympics, you know, people have circumstances. What do you want to create? Oh, you want to be win a gold medal in archery and you don't have arms? All right. Like, who knew that was a thing, right? Like, what do you want to create given the circumstances? And we all have circumstances. Now, if you think it's up to you how it turns out, that's not an easy question. That's not a fun question. But if you see that you are an infinite being, and the only thing between you and knowing that is your thoughts and believing your thoughts. So now when it's like, okay, given the circumstances, what do I want to create? And the thoughts come in, well, you can't do that. You're this age, or you're this weight, or you're this amount of money, or you don't have enough in your bank account. Blah, 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 blah. The question is no longer even present. But if you can like look at that question and not give any reverence to your thinking, suddenly you have a game to play.
Yeah.
So you're, a woman of a certain age and you recognize, like, is this it? No, this is just what you've done so far,
Right.
given your circumstances. Knowing your thinking is totally irrelevant. Like the commentators in a football game, right? Their commentary is not relevant to the field of play ever.
That's
They're
such
not
a
moving the
great
ball.
point. Yeah,
They're
that's a
never
great
moving the ball. They're just having an opinion about how the ball should get moved.
right.
The ball moves through action, not through thinking about it. So you go, okay, I'm at this point in my life. I'm this many years old. I'm this, that, or the other. Whatever you want to, whatever you think the constraints are, which 90% of them are not, maybe 95%, I don't know. Some large percentage are not. And you go, okay, what game do I want to play? right? Like, what do I want to create? I'm an infinite
Right.
being. What do I want to create?
Yeah.
And see what happens.
Love that.
Happy,
That's right.
happy place to be. And that doesn't mean
Right.
you're going to be happy all the time. Believe
Right.
me,
Right.
it just doesn't work that way. Neither should we don't think it should be. I mean, we all want it to be sunny all the time, I think, except there's some people who like snow apparently. But, we all, for most people, they want the sun to be shining all the time.
Hmm.
And yet that's not what happens. And we do okay. We live through that, right? But we never think the sun is gone because the clouds are here or it's raining. And that's the misunderstanding people have is if I'm not happy, the happiness is gone. No, the sun is always there and weather comes through. That's just what happens. So what?
That's right. The big question is, so what? Right?
Yeah.
So thank you so much for sharing your experience and your understanding. I have two questions for you. One is, where can people find you? And any last words of wisdom that you'd like to share?
Well, the best place to find me is my website. You can go to lisagiruzzi.com. That's my first name, and then my last name is Giruzzi, lisagiruzzi.com. And there's a place there to contact me. You can put your email in and sign up to have a session with me, or I think you can sign up for my email list there too. I should know that. It used to be there. I think it's still there. Um, and then, um, hmm,
You have another website too, right? Transformational Conversations
yeah, it all goes to the same place.
goes to the same place. And you're on
Yeah.
LinkedIn as well,
I'm
I
on LinkedIn.
believe.
Yes. I'm not as active as on LinkedIn. I have some articles posted there. Um, and that's probably the best place, LinkedIn. Yeah. I used to be on Facebook, not as much um, anymore, but I like LinkedIn.
Okay.
Um, but my website is really the best way to reach me, or you can email me at lisa@transformationalconversations.com.
Okay,
That's also,
great.
I'm
Okay.
open to all those possibilities. Um, Words of wisdom. What else? What else? Wisdom? Do we want what wants to get said?
What wants to come through you?
Yeah. I know that your podcast is about happiness, find your happy. I I think happiness finds us when we stop looking for it, when we stop trying to make it happen. And, I used to think I had to be doing the right thing, doing a presentation or working with a client or something like that to get happy. And I have discovered that it's always there. And if I'm not in, oh, I shouldn't have to do the dishes or I shouldn't have to whatever,
Yeah.
it just it just is there all the time. And I don't have to do much. I don't have to do anything except look for it because it's always there.
That's great. Well, let's all practice that now that we've gotten the permission to do that, to just stop and experience what is already. So again, thank you so much for spending a little time with me today. And for those of you who are listening or watching, thank you for joining us, and we will see you on the next conversation. So bye for now.